What up, guys? JZNES back again with another video, and today we're talking at long last, about The Last Guardian. What's that music? It's so serene or whatever. Okay. Oh, that fell. Well, so my experience with The Last Guardian was being hyped for it from the very beginning. I remember it was a long-running thing on the All Gen Gamers podcast, and Pete Dorr was always constantly talking about this Last Guardian thing, because his favorite game is Eco. Eco, this is the only copy I have of Eco, I don't have the PS2 version. But his favorite game is Eco, which I think is a great game. If you've seen my review or relook back at that, my replay review, as I call them, of that game. So I think that's a great game. I think that Shadow of the Colossus is a pretty good game. It's a very interesting game to talk about, as you can see from my video. I still stand by the fact that that game is probably more fun to talk about and interpret than to actually play. But I suppose you can say the same about Eco, but I feel like Eco at least has kind of, a defined style, and it has like a kind of a story going on that you can kind of interpret. All things we'll talk about with The Last Guardian here in a second. So, yeah, I've been meaning to get to this game for a while now, I mean, it came out in was it 2016 or something? I'm pretty sure. And, but it went through development hell. It was being developed from 2008 or something. It was a long time, 8 years or something. So, we have another Duke Nukem Forever on our hands, which, that game wasn't so great, but, who knows, maybe this one will be good. But, so yeah, we're talking about The Last Guardian. So I just kind of wanted to show, I played Eco, I played Shadow of the Colossus. Of course, I played Shadow of the Colossus, the remake on PS4. That was pretty good. I, did a comparison video between the two, versions of the game. So that's fun. And I pulled out The Girl and the Robot, because that's kind of a very similar game to this. But, yeah, so The Last Guardian, and I have my Last Guardian t-shirt, it's so funny that I think I got this, maybe before the game. Maybe this is after the game came out. I don't know, but it's just a really comfortable shirt, honestly. I saw it, I'm like, oh, The Last Guardian, that's so cool, because, at the time I was pretty hyped to play it and whatnot. Because it was a sequel to two really great games, some of the greatest games of all time, according to some people. My friend Nick, one of his favorite games is Shadow of the Colossus. I guess it's not his favorite game anymore, but it's high up there. So, and Eco, Pete Dorr's favorite game, and my friend Jameson really likes that game. I wonder if he would have put that in his top 10. We didn't really bring that up when we were talking about that before. But yeah, so it's been a long road coming for The Last Guardian. I've talked about it in a lot of videos, and that kind of thing. And I've been like, Last Guardian, gotta get to Last Guardian. I was playing Eco and Shadow of the Colossus. Oh, maybe I can get to The Last Guardian now, finally. So, but yeah. So I played the game. It's okay. It's not, the greatest game. And there's a lot of missed potential. I'm sure that's what I'm going to title this video, something like The Last Guardian, Missed Potential, or something like that, kind of thing. So, but I think that's my main gripe with the game, is just that it's such a missed potential in terms of it being a sequel or a successor, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, they're not really sequel games to each other. I mean, I think the Shadow of the Colossus and Eco are somehow linked or whatever, but that's all up for interpretation. The real problem is that the game just didn't live up to the other two, I think. And I don't know if necessarily I was expecting it to live up to the other two, but I was just kind of expecting a lot more from these developers. And me and my friends were talking about it, and I think it's interesting what they brought up is that, this game was in development hell for a long time, and it switched consoles from the PS3 to the PS4, so that's a lot of work. And there's even some times in the cutscenes or whatever, in the last cutscene when there's a bunch of people on screen, I'm like, this looks so PS3, it hurts. But then in the same cutscene, you got the big Trico, the big dog thing, whatever you want to call it, griffin. He's like a griffin, basically, is what I would think of him as. But you have him. He's like a dog griffin, I guess. Are griffins usually dog-like? I don't know. But anyway. You've got him, Trico, and the same cutscene, and I'm like, oh, well, he looks really good. He looks like PS4, and the environments look very PS4, so there's some evidence to suggest that the game is maybe a bit unfinished, or they just really didn't... I don't want to say it's unfinished, because I think what really happened is they just couldn't make it to their end goal of what they really wanted, and as my friend said to me, they probably just had to ship it out because the game was in development hell for so long, and I agree with that. I think that reflects in the final game, because it's not very balanced. It's very inconsistent. There's a lot of glitches. Like, I ran into so many just like random times where things would glitch, or like, I mean, the camera angles aren't always the best either, especially when you're around Trico. It's like sometimes the camera goes inside of him or whatever. It's like he's kind of blocks your path a lot of times in terms of vision, which you have to kind of have a good vision to see where all like the platforms and stuff are that you can go to next, because it's like 90% of the game is just platforming with Trico or whatever. And that's one of the big problems of the game, is that especially okay, just to say, I'm gonna spoil. There's nothing to spoil really. I'm gonna talk about the ending and some of the gameplay at the end as well. Not necessarily going to talk about the ending. I probably will. I'll probably mention it near the end of the video or something. But it's nothing, you know, like grandiose or anything, because the story in this game starts 3/4 of the way into the game and then ends at the end of the game. So like, okay, like what? Like what's that all about? They literally play... okay, I'm just going to spoil this here. I'm going to spoil the story, I guess, because it's not really a story. But they literally play the starting cutscene from any of the other games. Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, it would have been the starting cutscene in either of those games to get you invested in the world. They play that like 2/3 or 3/4 or something like that of the way through the game, which just doesn't make any sense to me. And it's such a random moment. It's like, why are you playing this now? It doesn't make any sense. Like, they could have just played that at the beginning, and I'd be like, oh, I get it. Okay, I'm invested because of this. You know, like, that's all I needed, you know? That's, I mean, I would have probably said, like, where's the story in the middle of the game then? But I'm still going to say that because there wasn't any story. Let's say that cutscene was at the beginning, right? It's not, but let's just say. There's no story for the whole, like, rest of the game outside of, like, there's other of these Trico things, and they don't like Trico because he likes the kid. That's the whole story. And that does culminate into a pretty intense scene near the end, which I think is great. And I do think I think my favorite part of the game is the last fourth of the game, and not just because it ends like I would say with Final Fantasy 13. My favorite part of the game is when it was over. But I don't know. I think I liked the ending in that game too, but I'm not talking about that. We're not talking about Final Fantasy 13. I'll say, this game is much better than Final Fantasy 13. It's not a bad game, but there's so much missed potential, you know. It's not great either, which is the problem, because these two games, while can be argued, are they great or not, you know, especially Shadow of the Colossus, like, a lot of people say, oh, this is great, you know, it's like one of the best games of all time or whatever. For me, it's a pretty great game, but like I said, I like talking about it more than I like playing it. So I don't know. I mean, it's a little subjective, you know. But a game like this, it's like, it's not necessarily the greatest game. It's more average than anything, which is kind of disappointing from these people. But anyway, so there's not much of a story. That kind of hurts, because not that there was really much of a story in the other games, but in the other games, there were events and there were things happening to progress the game. You're always going towards something. The reason that no story here doesn't really work for the game is because then the gameplay is just, and the environments and the areas and stuff are just super loose, and you have no idea of what you're trying to progress towards. Even still at the end of the game, it's like, it's basically what you think it is. All it is that you're trying to escape this valley, and you don't even know it's a valley for like the first until the end of the game, basically, as far as I could tell. But There, and I will say there is a cool moment at the end of the game where you're kind of on top of this thing that's like in the center of everything that you've gone through. So you can go and walk around this thing and look at all the stuff that you went through. But it's like I only recognize a few of those things because it's so like the areas are so unmemorable and they don't really mean anything. And you never knew if they had like put this thing in the middle of all of the scenery or whatever. So you knew that this is where you were progressing to the whole time. That might have worked a little bit better because in a game like Eco. You know, hey, I'm trying to escape this place, and I'm trying to get to this, first of all, you're trying to get this door to open, so you're trying to go there. There's just, it makes a lot more sense, you know, like where you're always trying to go, or what your goal is. You're always trying to protect your girl, you know, Yorda, it fell again. Always trying to protect her, always trying to help her through. It's interesting because in this game you are Yorda basically. You're kind of defenseless and you're kind of relying on Eco. That's pretty funny. I don't know if that was intentional, but Trico, who is the Eco of this game. You know, the character that you were playing as in Eco. That's now the dog that is following you around, and you have to command him. And I'll talk about that in a minute here. But my point is that it's not very clear what the goal or the thing that you're trying to do in this game is. Like, it was pretty obvious in Eco that your whole goal was Eco wants to escape. He wants to take Yorda with him, and you want to get away from the evil witch lady because she's evil or whatever. It's simple, but it was a good story in terms of you felt the emotions. You were holding the girl's hand the whole time. That was a really good mechanic in that game, was holding her hand, because it's great. It's not, I mean, in this game you pet the thing, or you pet the dog griffin guy, Trico, that is. Trico? Is his name Trico? Trico's a Pokemon. That can't be right, can it? Is his name Trico? Oh my god, I feel so stupid. I don't know, I'm tired, I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure his name is Trico. That's a Pokemon. It makes me think of the fucking, the Sceptile guy. That's so funny. Anyway, in Shadow of the Colossus, it's very apparent right from the start what you're trying to do is resurrect your girlfriend. Where's your goal at? Well, you literally had a shiny thing that you would hold up into the sky, you know, skyward slash or whatever, and it would show you exactly where you're going, and you knew what was going to happen when you get there. You're going to fight a Colossus, and you're going to feel bad that you killed it or whatever, except for the giant water one. I don't feel bad whenever I kill him, because he sucks. He's the worst one. But, yeah, so it's always very clear what you're doing. In this game, it's like, okay, I think I'm trying to escape with the dog thing. Like, I think, like, you know, they really could have put some more cutscenes in there to polish out, like, what the whole thing was and, like, the dynamic. I mean, the dynamic between the two characters is probably one of the best parts of the game. It's not very well fleshed out, but it's there. And you do form a connection with this dog, Griffin dog, for the most part. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, I think that's one of the best parts of the game, you know. Yeah. So, it's not always very apparent what your goal is in the game. The goal is to progress, which isn't a very good goal in a game. You want to mask that behind, like, okay, we're going here to do this thing. That's why the story is important. So the story just doesn't make any sense because there is no story. The story is literally the thing at the beginning that they put in the third fourths of the game, because there is no opening cutscene. You just, as far as I remember, you're just kind of thrusted into it. It's weird that they put that cutscene later. I don't understand that at all. And there's a little thing about, you know, you getting home at the end or whatever, which is great. Yeah, and I mean, all that's great. I just wanted more of that. You know, if they put more of that stuff in there, you know, that would have been great. That would have made the game a lot better, honestly. If there's some kind of goal we were working towards the whole time, other than just escaping. I don't know. It just didn't feel very interesting, you know? It's like, and then, so, when you're traveling and traversing these environments with your animal friend, you know, it's like not a lot's going on. You're just platforming. You're doing some puzzles occasionally, which are pretty alright. You know, like, basically you have a few commands that you can, like, tell the dog, you know, like, sit, or, like, hey, let's jump up there, or, like, ram into this thing. I don't think that ever, like, actually came up. I don't know. I can't remember a time where... I remember times where I tried it, but it never really did anything. But I don't know, man. I think there might have been some scenario where you had to do that or something. I don't remember what Circle did, but something. Here's something I want to talk about, since we're talking about the gameplay with the dog. Now, those commands work okay. They work sometimes. You kind of have to know exactly where you're trying to get, and you have to kind of point him in that direction, which is a little tricky sometimes. Now, at the very beginning of the game, before you even leave the, like, first cave or whatever where you find this dog, you have to do a thing and then you crawl through this little hole and you find this, like, mirror shield, like from Zelda or something. Like, it's like a mirror shield. You point it, and light comes out of it, and then you find out that this makes Trico shoot lightning out of his tail, and you're like, oh, that's badass. Like, that's gonna be how I attack enemies in the game. But they don't do that. They like almost instantly take away this mirror shield thing, which is like badass. It's such a cool tool. And you don't even get it back until like 2/3 of the way through the game, and it's like, why did we take it away this whole time? Like, here's what I would have wanted. Since okay, in this game, like I said, you're Yorda, so basically there's these soldier, like, armor things that, like, come after you or whatever at random points in the game, and you're pretty much defenseless. You can't do anything. All you have to do is, like, mash buttons. Literally, here, let me grab my PS4 controller. You know when you're playing Resident Evil or something, like back in the day, and you would mash all the buttons because you're like, because you thought that worked? Which I don't think it necessarily did. I'm pretty sure there's only, like, one button you actually had to press, but you would do that because you're like, get off of me, zombie! You literally have to do that in this game, as far as I know, is hit all of the buttons to get this, like, spell thing off of the screen or whatever, and you do that whenever you die too. It's really strange. I don't know what that was all about, but you literally have to hit every fucking button to make it, like, go faster or whatever. And that's what these guys do. They grab you, and then that stuff, that, like, writing or language or hieroglyphics or whatever, come across the screen, and you hit all the buttons a million times and as fast as you can, so that they'll you know, so that the thing will go away and you can break away from them. Which here's my problem with that. Now, I understand, maybe put some situations in there where you don't have your badass Trico friend to help you out, and you have to kind of scramble and hurry and stuff to get away. You could have done that just as easily with not, like just block Trico off somewhere else where you can't see him, and then fucking you can still have the mirror shield or whatever. You don't have to take it away from me for 2/3 of the game. Like, I don't know what that was about. Like, that's so strange to me that they decided to do that. My thought is, because those parts were really annoying without that shield. It was just super annoying. My thought is, what they could have done, since the shield emits, like, a light or whatever, what if, when I'm pointing that light at a certain direction, so I'll hit, so the buttons are, let's say you hit circle, right? Instead of R1, you don't really need R1, or just put the shield on R1, alright? Here's what you do. Put the shield on R1, and then, instead of, like, having to call to your guy or whatever, or maybe you can, I don't know, that's fine. I don't care. If he calls to him, whatever, sure. Put the shield on R1. Then, based on what the button you press, then, and where you're pointing the shield at, then you're telling him, hey, triangle R1, right? Triangle R1, hey, where I'm pointing the shield, let's jump there. You know? That makes more sense to me. That's like a much more intuitive system, and I think that probably is what they would have done had they had more time to work on this, you know? Or you can be like R1 square, you know, like you point the shield at a thing you want him to bash, hey, go bash that thing. Because when you hold the shield for long enough, he'll, like, do his lightning thing. I mean, that could have just been like R1 different button or something. Like, let's say if the shield is R1. That's what I'm saying with all these examples. So that would have been a more intuitive system, I think, for myself anyway. So if they'd done something like that rather than taking the shield away from you for half the game, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. And then the areas and the level design might have been a little bit more memorable and better because then you'll remember the part where you're like, oh, there was that part where Trico wasn't there and he was blocked off by this path or something. Like, you'll kind of remember that better, you know? So that, like, fixes all your problems right there and add a little bit more story, I would say. So that was just disappointing that they, like, take that shield away from you, like, super early in the game. And the best part is, at the end of the game, the part that I actually liked, there's a lot of puzzles and stuff that you do with the shield. Like, it'll raise platforms and, like, I don't know, open doors and do all sorts of random shit, and it's fucking awesome. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is really cool. Like, and it stuns the armor guys, which would have been a perfect thing. I don't see why they took away the shield in the early game, because then you can stun the armor guys and just, like, kind of keep going, you know, and to whatever you're doing. Like, usually you have to hit a switch or something so Trico can come in that room and start bashing at the guys. It still would have worked out just as fine. Like, why couldn't I have had the shield the whole game? This doesn't make any sense to me. It's very stupid to me that they took that out. I don't understand. I literally, I just don't get it at all. And here's my thing. So if you have the shield the whole game, great. You know, whatever. That's much better. But there's not a lot of combat sections throughout the game other than you're running away from these armor guys, right? So if you have the shield, it's a little more interesting because you get to stun them in those sections. What I would have done is, near the end of the game, in the last fourth, there's like lots and loads in combat sections with these armor guys, and then there's a part at the end where you fight a bunch of Griffin guys. I mean, you don't really fight them. You kind of like, they're fighting Trico or whatever, and so you have to like go and do a thing to get them to stop, kind of thing, which is great. That was great. You know, it's more stuff like that. If they had interspersed those throughout the game, because they had a part near the end of the game too. If they had put this earlier, it might have been a lot better. But it felt like one of the only traditional like boss fights. You weren't even really technically fighting the thing, but it felt like a boss fight because you're kind of a defenseless kid. You still didn't have the mirror shield at this point, but you're a defenseless kid, and what you were doing was one of the Griffin things is fighting Trico, and he's all armored up or whatever, so you can tell the difference. Good touch there. You basically have to hit these switches so that these like giant, like, you know, what do you call them, like great doors land on his tail or on himself, on the bad Griffin, and that's a boss fight. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's great. They could have put more stuff like that in there. Or if we had I don't know, some Shadow of the Colossus boss fights, you know, or something to that effect, where maybe there's a big Griffin, you gotta climb him, and Trico helps you out or something. You know, not you don't have to put like 16 of them in there. I'm just saying put like 1 or 2 of them in there. So it's kind of a nice callback to the mechanics of Shadow of the Colossus, because it's basically what you're doing anyway. You're climbing up on your own Trico and stuff, so it's like come on, you know, fan service for the old games or whatever. I don't know. That's the other thing. This game didn't feel very connected to the old games, like, much at all, which is fine. It's just like, you know, Shadow of the Colossus and Eco felt kind of connected, so it's a little odd that they didn't really tie it in at all. The only, like, tied in thing is the kid kind of looks like, you know, Eco and maybe the Wanderer or something. I mean, they always look like, you know, that same character design or whatnot, but yeah, it's not the same person. Probably, I doubt it. I can't imagine it would be. But yeah, it just didn't feel very connected to the other games, which is interesting, other than like the art style or whatever. But even so, the other games had much more interesting environments. And you know, it's pretty linear, which it's extremely linear. It's 100% linear. I mean, there's not really any branching paths or anything. And Eco was pretty linear too, but there was some things you could explore. In Shadow of the Colossus especially, there was a giant overworld to explore. Not that there was a lot to do in the overworld, but there's some really diverse areas in that game, and there wasn't a lot of diversity in the areas in this game. I would say the same with Eco, is there's a lot of diversities in the areas, like you have a giant windmill and stuff, and that's such like a memorable part of that game. It's like there's not really any like super memorable parts of this game or environments or whatever, other than maybe the ending tower was pretty cool. I always remember that. I don't know, just stuff like that would have really enhanced the game, I would say. So, but I know that's hard stuff to do, especially when you're under a time limit, so it is what it is. It just has a lot of missed potential because of that kind of thing, so yeah, I mean, just like, it was just so odd that they didn't have the mirror shield the whole game. That was a big problem. Yeah, all that stuff combined, it's like sometimes the Griffin dog wouldn't like listen to me, and or like, it's not that he wasn't listening. It's just like you got to be pointed in a very specific direction. He's wobbling all over the place and stuff, and it's kind of gets a little hectic sometimes. But so yeah, that was a little odd. You're not always very sure what to do either. I definitely had to like keep a walkthrough handy, like pretty close by. A lot of times to like even know where I was supposed to go in like these massive environments of like architecture and stuff. So that was a little odd, but like stuff like that, it just kind of bothered me. Little things like that. I would say definitely some good aspects of the game are like the music and stuff. And I thought it was cool how, despite me saying that earlier, that it's not as cool as, you holding Yorda's hand or whatever, or having a button to call aggro or something, I guess would be the equivalent of that maybe in Shadow of the Colossus, or so, I don't know, something to that effect. But I thought it was cool how when you, so your dog friend, doggo friend, Trico gets like really angry when those little guards are around or whatever. He like beats the shit out of him. And you can see his eyes are red. So like whenever that happens, you have to like climb up on him and like pet him to calm him down and stuff. Like I thought that was pretty cool. There's a lot of little things like that like people who own like a cat or a dog or something will get a kick out of, because it's like he's basically just a giant pet. You have to like feed him these barrels throughout the game, which I guess I won't really spoil it, but you do find out like at the end what's like actually in those barrels, and it's kind of fucked up. It's kind of a surprising twist of what was in those barrels that you've been feeding him the whole game, so that's interesting for sure. I don't even know if they really served much of a purpose outside of a few like. There's a lot of times where Trico will get like hurt or something, and you actually need to go and get him these barrels so he like gets energy again or whatever. So there's that. So that's kind of what the barrels do, but like, they're like kind of hidden away. So I don't know, like the puzzles and stuff were all right at times, but a lot of them had pretty obscure solutions or something. It's just kind of odd sometimes, like, oh, that's what I had to do, the kind of thing. You just feel like, what? But I thought the mechanic of, anyway, so when he gets all angry, I thought the mechanic of you having to go up and pet him, and your guy says a thing, and he's trying to calm him down, I thought that was pretty cool. Definitely relatable, #relatable as a pet owner. So yeah, just stuff like that is nice. The relationship between you and Trico is very dog and his master kind of thing. I mean, dog and his human. I don't know, like not master. I mean, you do order him around a lot, but so that was pretty cool. There's also these mirror things I haven't mentioned yet, like not the mirror shield, but there's like these things that like he gets really distracted by, so he like stops at them, and the enemies actually have them like as shields sometimes to like stun him, and so he can't like destroy him. So you have to like destroy these mirrors and stuff. I thought that was a pretty cool concept of like, okay, I gotta figure out how I get to these mirrors, how I figure out how to destroy these or whatever. More stuff like that would have been kind of welcome. But so my point was with the whole combat thing. I kind of wish that was more interspersed throughout the game. So like the heavy amount of the combat, the good combat anyway, was near the end of the game, within that last fourth there. It's parts that I liked. I really wish we would have had some more set pieces. We'll get to a thing, and even if it was just like you have to fight a horde of guys or something, like, that's good. I'm okay with that. Like, put that at certain sections to spice up in between the platforming gameplay. That would have been nice. Without that, it feels really like samey for a lot of the game, because you're just kind of doing the bunch of the platforming, and then sometimes you run into those guards and you're like, oh no, I gotta run away from these guys again and hit a switch or something so Trico can come and help me. And it's like, it's just annoying more so. So that comes back to the mirror shield problem again. But more combat scenarios interspersed throughout your main campaign there, and also maybe maybe then you can have the mirror shield too to make it more interesting, I would say. I don't know, maybe even get like a different thing too, like a sword or something. That would have been nice, but that's maybe taking it too far. The mirror shield itself is fine enough, I think. I think that would have worked just fine, because the game's not very long. It's like a 5-hour game, I would say something in that ballpark there. So like if you just have the mirror shield the whole time, I don't think it's going to get too samey and old. I mean, I think it would. I don't think that fixes all of the problems just to give you that the whole game, but I do think it would have improved the game a lot, because then at least you're getting the satisfaction of, hey, I'm going to point my thing here, you're going to lightning there? Okay, cool, because there's like later sections where guards will be up on these like little, I don't know, like really, like, what do you call that? Like a patio. Like at an apartment building, you'll have those little like patios or whatever, something like that, an overlook or whatever, and then you'll have Trico like shoot up there and stuff. And I thought that was cool. That could have just been parts originally in the middle of the game, in the early game or something. You didn't have to shove all that good gameplay right for the end. You could have taken those like 5 or 6 or 7 fights that you do at the end and just disperse them throughout the game, and I think that would have been good. And maybe even have an aspect of like some of those guards chasing you. Maybe make the guards like characters or something. Maybe make one like a really distinctive guard, and that he's coming and chasing after you, kind of like in Final Fantasy, god damn it, Dragon Quest 11, like with Hendrik, and then he can turn around and be a guy later, you can have a cool storyline with that there or something. That'd be pretty cool. So, yeah, I mean, you could have done something like that. That would have been great. Except, no, they didn't do that, because they're just generic enemies, which is like, alright, fine. If you want to do that, you want to do that. That's great. That's what you chose to do. Okay. So, yeah, it is what it is. I get that the game was rushed, and that's unfortunate. It could have been a much better game overall. But there's a lot of aspects to it that weren't that great. I think visually the game looks pretty good, other than the odd cutscene thing. Like I said, like that is kind of odd. I don't think the visuals were the reason that the areas didn't stand out much. I think it was more so that the gameplay was just repetitive, and you weren't really paying attention to the areas and stuff quite as much. Visually though, the areas look pretty cool. They look fine. I mean, they're not as distinctive, but the graphical styling of the areas looked good, that kind of thing. So, the soundtrack was bare, and believe it or not, it was kind of a Breath of the Wild thing where they interspersed it like very thinly throughout the game, and it would only come on at the very specific moments. But it was good, as you can hear when it was going off. I mean, it's really intense sometimes. That's crazy, and it's nice. And there's a lot of scenarios where you'll be like, I don't know, like running away from a crumbling thing or something, but it's never you running. It's always just like Trico's running or something. There's like a bunch of times when you'll fall and he'll have to like catch you and stuff, and like that works towards the like building the relationship thing. But it's just like sometimes he's like slipping off a building or something. You're like, he's not gonna fall here. I mean, if he does fall here, we're gonna be fine. There's gonna be something below or whatever, obviously we're gonna make it through the game. Oh, that was the other thing, is the fact that, so, and I mean, this does kind of make sense for what the ending is, what you see, post-credits or whatever, but, so, it's very interesting how the whole time you're going through the game, the guiding voice, you know, kind of like in Shadow of the Colossus, the guiding voice would tell you stuff you were supposed to do on how to defeat Colossus or whatever. So, Colossi, I guess it would be. But in this game, the guiding voice is yourself, and he's narrating what you're doing, and sometimes he's really unhelpful. I mean, you're really unhelpful. I don't know. But it's like your older self telling the story again or whatever, which, like, okay, they tied that into the end. That was pretty cool. I mean, the ending was good. I'll talk about that here in a second, but the hints that they give sometimes aren't necessarily the best. And also, how are you telling the story, you know, like, if you didn't make it out, like, so kind of spoils that. So there's no really, like, emotional weight to that. I'm like, oh, am I gonna make it or am I not gonna make it? Am I gonna die or something? Like, you know, but, you know, obviously your voice isn't Trico, so you never know, is he gonna be okay or not? So I guess that's the emotional connection or something, which is fine. I mean, they did do some good stuff with that near the end, so, not to spoil anything, but, yeah. But I think the ending was pretty good. I won't spoil too much of it, like I said, but it definitely, especially like the last fourth of the gameplay, and then the ending showed me what the potential of this game could have been. You know, like had they interspersed that stuff throughout the story, throughout the main part of the game, the main bulk of the game, like I had said, I think the game could have turned out a lot better. I don't think it would have been amazing or anything, but I think it could have been more interesting and more on par with its predecessors. And I think at that point, if those things had been fixed, like all the things that I've been talking about, if those things had been a little bit different, I think people would then be able to be like, oh, okay, I can defend this game, you know, I can say, oh, it's kind of underrated. I mean, I know this isn't the best or that's not the best, but you could still say that now. I just don't believe that myself. I think it's fine. I don't think it's a bad game, like I said. I think I've definitely played a lot worse games, but there's a lot of missed potential. It's not bad, but it's not very good either. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's good elements to the game, and that's the thing. And that's why it's so disappointing what they did. You know, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed or whatever. But so yeah, it's just a little bit disappointing. And with all the hype, you know, of all the years of going into it, and Pete Dorr talking about it for how many years and stuff, I was just a little overhyped for it, I suppose, as well. But I don't know. I wasn't necessarily expecting a lot after not hearing much about it, and just thought it would be pretty okay. But it probably did less than I expected. But also, I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think it's the best game either, kind of thing. So, you know, it's fine. It's an okay game. Yeah, it's just a lot of missed potential, like I said. The last fourth of the game kind of shows the elements of what the game could have been on a grander scale, and that would have been a little bit better. And I don't know how they would have fixed the whole thing, but maybe they could have added, I don't know, like, maybe you would go through that central tower every now and again or something. Like, that'd be your hub, you know, to everything, so you kind of have a perspective on where everything is, or as long as you can see it in the distance. I think most of the time that would have been pretty cool, you know, kind of a goal you're working towards kind of thing would have been pretty nice to incorporate into the story. But yeah, like those things, I don't want to say they feel unfinished, because they feel finished, but they're just not polished, is what it really is, you know. So it's an unpolished game, which is kind of a bad thing on a lot of levels. Is this already over? Okay, I was like, God, did I actually talk about it for that long? So yeah, I don't want to keep going on about it, because there's not a lot else to say, but I think that the strongest parts of the game are the relationship between you and your doggo friend, your doggo Griffin. I think there's some great moments, like when he learns to fly and stuff. And when the music hits in there, and it's like, you feel that. It's really cool. Oh, another aspect is you like go and take spears out of him whenever the guys chuck them at him, and I think that's pretty cool. It's like you're helping him out and that kind of thing, and he gets pretty banged up by the end of the game, but it's you both look out for each other. That's cool. That's a cool aspect. I mean, I just wish they might have explored that relationship a little bit more between him and the dog, and just I don't know, just done a little bit more with that, done a little bit more with the story and stuff, and that might have been better had they done that kind of thing. I mean, they try, but it's like it just feels like they didn't get to all the things that they wanted to get to in that regard. So, that and the music was a pretty positive for me. The graphics were all right, so I mean that's on the positive side. The gameplay when you had the mirror was pretty cool, like the combat sections and stuff. It made me actually appreciate the puzzle aspects of the game more so when I had that mirror. The puzzle stuff is fine. It's just like a lot of it's kind of obscure solutions, or like, oh, where am I supposed to go? Okay, up there. Okay, cool. All I had to do was jump up there. So it's either too easy or way too hard half the time, way too cryptic half the time. So like, I don't know, like, and I've already harped on and on about the problem, so I don't really need to recap that, but you get the idea with that. Just a lot of missed potential, especially when comparing it to two of the greatest games of the last few generations. Or, I mean, technically they all were in the PS2 generation, those two games, but I feel like their definitive versions were obviously 7th gen and 8th gen, so it's pretty good games from those generations, or remakes or whatever you want to call them. It's just a little bit disappointing that this game didn't really live up to those in that regard, and that it wasn't just a little bit more polished and a little bit better, But overall, that's all to say that the game is fine, but it's not good, it's not bad. I would give it a 6.5. I think that's fair. I was gonna give it a 6. The last fourth of the game hit when I was playing it earlier, and I'm like, okay, so it's better. They're actually trying to do a story here a little bit, or just like it had a kind of cohesive ending, which was great, And I thought, oh, okay, if we could add more of this or something. Like, I don't know how they would have done it, but that was for them to figure out, more so than myself. But a 6.5, I think that's fair enough. I can't give it any higher. I can't really give it much lower, except for like maybe a 6, It's somewhere in that range, mid to low 6 kind of thing. So, and I'd give these games like higher scores than that, I think. But I don't want to rate it much lower because it's competent. It's an all right game. It's just it could have been so much better. There's a lot of missed potential. Drink every time I say that in this video. Go back and watch the video again and just like make it a drinking game. Every time I say missed potential, you'll be drunk by the end of the video. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. Would I recommend it? Maybe give it a shot if you can get it for really cheap. Like I probably got this copy for like $10. If you can get it really cheap, and you're a big fan of Shadow of the Colossus and Eco, but even so, then you might really just be disappointed. I don't know. It's hard to recommend, but it's a fine game. Fine. Not like fine as in, oh, it's a fine game. It's like, no, it's all right. So I don't know. Can't really, I don't know what else to say about it. It's fine. It's just perfectly average, So, but it is what it is. So, until next time, this has been JZNES saying, keep it classic and stick around for more reviews, underrated games, and something other than talking about Last Guardian next time. Actually, next time, well, maybe not necessarily next time. I think what I'm going to do is I'll probably play Mega Man Battle Network 2 next. and then I'll do some games that I've been meaning to get to for a while after that, because I still want to intersperse the Mega Man Battle Network games, and I am itching to actually play Mega Man Battle Network again, because it's funny, but the thing is that I'm really wary about playing 2, but I've just had this itch. I've been trying to get through this last Guardian game. Maybe that was part of it. Maybe that's part of why I wasn't having the best time with it, but I was really anxious to get to the last Guardian, man. It's like, because I wanted to play Mega Man Battle Network 2, a game that I think is kind of bad, but like, I want to give it another shot, you know. I want to see if it's really as bad and hard as I've always made it out to be. Because I don't even remember a lot of the game, you know, and I really would like to give it another shot, because that series is so good, and I think that is, we'll talk about it when we get to that, but that and a few, the next, I made, okay, so like I told my friends, I made like, I took like 20 games from my backlog that I want to beat this year, kind of thing. I don't know, I just, ones that I thought were interesting, like the first like 5 or 6 are pretty like one high profile, like ones I want to actually really get to. I'm not going to spoil them for the future, but so I took them and I rolled the dice, 20 times or whatever, and put them in that order. But I will say that one of them, I'll give you some clues. So one of them is a game that relates to a game that is getting a remake here, and everyone's really hyped about that, which is a game that I've never played more than like maybe 5 or 10 hours of. I wasn't super invested in it back then, but I really want to be invested in it when I get back to it now. But it's the predecessor to that game. And then there's a sequel to a game that that I spoke highly of last year that also is going to lead to a game that everyone else is speaking very highly of. So you can figure that one out. Let's see, what else we got over there? There's a classic horror franchise, one that everyone forgets about in that franchise, and then one that's a classic in that franchise that I need to get to. There's a game that's based on a movie that I really want to get to. Based on a movie series. It's actually like a sequel to some of the movies there. Put it that way. What's that last one? I can't even tell. Oh, I have a remake to a classic PS1 game that I played on demo discs back in the day. Not the same demo disc as Tombo, but the same demo disc as Metal Gear Solid 1 that I played the shit out of. So there's that. And then we've got a few others, some sequels to some games I talked about a long time ago. We've got, I don't know, just a whole bunch of other stuff that I got to get to. But I just thought I'd list off a few of those ones that are coming up. So you can figure that out. Maybe type in the comments like what your guess is. If you're a big fan of the channel and you kind of know maybe what I'm talking about with these games. But yeah, so sorry, I was right in the middle of signing out, but I just looked over there and I'm like, maybe I should tell them what I'm going to play next, But I'll be doing the Mega Man Battle Network series in between each of those, so that'll be fun. But anyway, it's been JZNES saying keep it classic, stick around for more views, underrated games, subscribe because we're almost 200 subscribers. That would be amazing if we can get there after 7 years of doing this shit. We can get to 100 subscribers, that'd be awesome. I'd lose my mind, over that. I'll do something special. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'll do something. Maybe I'll do a top 10 games of all time, or I can. I was thinking about, God, what was I thinking about earlier that I was gonna do? It could be like a really long thing. I was thinking about. Well, I was thinking about doing a few NES videos. Let's put it that way, or just one big NES video about like maybe the whole console library. Like just showing off all the games and maybe talking about them. Just briefly or something to that effect. I don't know. Maybe we'll do something like that, or maybe we'll figure something out. I'll do something special for 100 subscribers, but we gotta get there first. Still take a little while to get there, but so tell your friends, go tell them to subscribe to JZNES or whatever. Keep it classic. Stick around for more reviews, underrated games. 3rd time's the charm, everyone. Stick around for more reviews, underrated games. I'll see you in the next one. JZ.